Hi, it's Alice Padgett for UBTV, and today we're at a chill and chat event held by the University of Bristol Islamic Society.
My name's Abdirahman, also known as Abdi, for those who might find it a bit more difficult to pronounce Abdirahman. I'm from the University of Bristol Islamic Society, and this month we've been running Islamophobia Awareness Month, and we're having our last event today, which is the Chill and Chat event, where we're providing a safe space for Muslim students to share their experiences of Islamophobia. And it's very important to hold just so that people can vent their frustrations and just sort of share what they've been through. Islamophobia is deeply rooted in an ignorance of what Islam is.
That depends on how you define Islamophobia, if you ask me. The conventional definitions of Islamophobia, where somebody calls me a terrorist or something, probably doesn't happen as much, not to me at least. How I would define Islamophobia is when Muslims are alienated from society, and sometimes people might say that they have to reduce their Muslimness in order to fit in. And I do think that this, at least, is a big problem in Bristol.
A lot of Islamophobia is overt, but is also institutional, and marginalization exists in so many different ways that people often invalidate, and that's one of the biggest struggles with Islamophobia. It's awful, it's our responsibility, all of us, to stand up against it, but it's not a surprise. And I think that understanding that Islamophobia isn't coincidental, it's serving a very active political and economic agenda. I think when people get that, they'll then understand that they need to actively fight against it, and getting resources from those regions, things like oil, like these sorts of things. So really, like, if you think about it, you need to kind of convince people in this country, for example, that Muslims are the enemy, that because you dehumanize Muslims, they're not people, therefore we can do what we like in these countries. And, you know, the resultant refugees that come over, you've dehumanized them because of the Islamophobia that exists.
Yes, absolutely. I think Islamophobia is something that's been going on for almost forever, especially in the post 9/11 era, because since then the world has become increasingly opposed to Islam. But I don't think it's just a matter of just yelling at someone and labeling them as Islamophobic. I think it's something that has been ingrained in the very culture of the UK, not just Bristol.
I went to Oxford about a month ago with my friend from UE, and we were walking in this, like, I wouldn't call it an alley because it's in a neighborhood, but it's quite a tight space. And there was this lady coming from the other side. So my friend had a really, like, Muslim beard, and he was South Asian, Pakistani. And when this lady was passing by, she froze, and I gave my normal reaction, which is to laugh at it dismissively, but my friend took it to heart.
I went to Catholic primary school when I was younger, so growing up I was constantly alienated. Every time there was something like a terror attack or something in the Middle East, or even something that was seen on the media, I was always treated to believe that I was on some level slightly responsible just because I was Muslim, and that really alienated me. This kind of emotions, just, to be honest, they just carried on, especially in my first year of halls, when some people genuinely believed that I was gonna force them to convert to Islam and force everyone into burqas. I mean, it's ridiculous. And this is rather personal, but my name is Abdirahman. In Islam, that means servant of the most merciful, and it's one of the most religious names in Islam. But a lot of people call me Abdul, which translates to slave, and every time, so you can imagine, every time someone calls me Abdul, I always feel this intense disrespect every time this happens, and that's just genuinely upsetting.
There's a big difference in whether or not you are perceived as visibly Muslim or not. And as you may know, Muslim women tend to wear hijab and are much more instantly recognizable, and therefore at a greater threat sometimes to instances of Islamophobia.
I had a face mask on and someone told me I look like a ninja. It doesn't really get to me, I guess. I kind of would say I'm a confident person. Prima facie, it might seem like that's quite ironic, seeming as I'm quite covered up.
When I was on placement in medical school, I got told by someone that like, oh, like, how can you be studying medicine and wear that on your head? And this was a doctor, and like, that was really, really difficult to hear. You question yourself, like, was my experience valid enough to even report? Because it's like, sure, if someone like actively calls you like a terrorist, then that's still awful but easier to report. But something like if someone does an event for networking purposes and it's drinking and it's in a pub and you can't go because that's not compatible with your faith, but then in that event contacts are exchanged, opportunities are given, you miss out.
That people probably think, well, I haven't actually had anyone say it to me, but like I cover up because like a man told me to, or my parents told me to. No, not necessarily. Like, I usually don't wear this, but I'm wearing it now because of COVID, because they expect me to wear a mask, so I might as well wear it. And I feel like I'm not like throwing shade on anyone, or I'm not trying to like look down on anyone who doesn't dress the way that I do, because everyone has their own choices. But when we till this day, when you see nuns and stuff that are fully covered, they have the hijab on as well. Hijab is basically just a covering. No one has anything to say, but it's like, and also with like the feminist movement, when women want to say that, you know, my body, my liberation, but then why is it a problem when Muslim women want to cover up? Why all of a sudden is it not my body? Why is it like your body? Why is it the body of the community that wants me to dress a certain way? And I'll be honest with you, I've been there, I've dressed that way, and I've come to this way, and I feel like I'm still the same person. Like, I should still be respected the same way. And I like to wear the same things that you guys do, but just in the house. Like, I come out like this because I'm comfortable. And I think people struggle to look past that shield. I think everyone will tell you that terrorists are not Muslims. They might be calling themselves the Islamic State, but they don't represent what Islam is about. They are their own versions of what they call themselves Muslims. If you read the Holy Quran, you'll see that there's nowhere in there which is inciting violence, and they're taking their own interpretation like anyone does. Like, if we can agree that when you read Hamlet, when you read Macbeth, people take their own interpretations, it's in the same way that people read the Holy Quran and they take their own interpretations of what Islam's promoting. Yeah, I think we should all just be nicer to everyone and just try and be a bit more understanding.
I do think that ultimately when you connect with a Muslim heart to heart, person to person, you'll find out that ultimately, just like the other students here in uni, we're just here to, experience the uni life.
We're not violent. We didn't spread our culture by the sword. A lot of these issues that you see in the media in Syria and Afghanistan, they are not issues of Islam. They are issues of cultures that have taken Islam and using it to enact their political bidding.
A lot of overt Islamophobia still happens, especially in isolated places, and there's still not that policy there to protect people against it. But also a lot of Islamophobia isn't so overt and like easy to pinpoint, but it's still really real for people. And ultimately, like, really want to get the biggest message across that like there are victims of Islamophobia that can't even be here to talk about it. Like, this is an active agenda that we all need to fight against as a community.
People see us as strangers, as people that like are a bit weird, and I would get that off the front of it. But they're going to meet people like this, and if they're not tolerant, they're not going to get very far in life. If we're being completely honest, then you probably will reach a moment in your life where you meet someone that's just completely different to you, and you're going to have to live in harmony. So you might as well just start now if you want to be happier, because if you treat other people nicely, you will be happy.